Hello and welcome back to another episode of the European Tour Picks and Bets. Skylar, Hoke here. Tom Jacobs, how you doing?
I'm good, Sky. How are you?
Doing wonderful, man. It was quite the week. The European event finishing on Monday, 54 holes. It had some fireworks to it. It was awesome to see the Bullet get over the line. What an awesome interview he had, emotional. Just been there so many times. The ball striking has been consistent, for the last year. It seemed a matter of when instead of if. But the odds were quite deep. And of course, he was one we brought up last week, but it did not end up on our final cards. Those are always a little bittersweet, but I'm so happy for Marcus Armitage.
Yeah, I think the thing with us is, didn't we? We said that he's really impressed with his irons and he was on the short list, but he's so volatile that we didn't know quite what to expect, and it paid off. And we took the guy like Pablo Larrazábal, who's volatile, and he decided to fly back off the leaderboard, and Armitage went the other way, and that's what you get with those type of guys. They can go in different directions and fast as well. So, really happy for him. I think his interview he's done on a No Lane Up podcast. Great, if you ever get to listen to that. Good guy, good win. And it leads us into a rather different event this week.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite the one we have ahead of us, and just before the US Open. We are gearing up. We have that top 10 list now of the golfers that have made it into the Torrey Pines US Open. We did just have the ladies ladies US Women's Open as well, which was an epic finish over there. Thankfully, my girl Yuka Sasso came through, 300-1 winner. Those don't come around too often. So that Lexi Thompson, thank you for that back nine meltdown.
And I decided to tell you picks because you're the guy, and I went with Rachel Heck instead, who, to her credit, played pretty well. But it was the other long shot season that got the job done.
Yeah, that's one way they thankfully went about. On the other side of things in Germany, I got a little cute, I think, with those long shots. The week before we saw, Moeller, we saw Axelson, we saw a few different guys get into the mix that were more of the local guys. Last week, they were at the literal bottom of the leaderboard. Benedikt Staben, Matthias Schmid, some of these guys did not pan out, even with the 54 holes that we anticipated it to. So I will say, though, I want to review that top 10 quickly. It was Richard Bland, number 1. Guido Migliazzi coming in at number 2. Armitage is 3rd. Mikko Kohonen, who did say no to his U.S. Open exemption. Jordan Smith, Adrian Meronk, Dodo Molinari, Dave Coupland, Thomas Dietrich, and Matthew Southgate were the top 10 of that mini order of merit. So really excited for some of our guys to be teeing it up at Torrey.
Yeah, and like you say, Kohonen's given up his spot. So I don't quite know. I don't know if you've heard yet who comes in that spot to take that. But Jason Scrivener was up there. I think he's probably in now as well. Darius Van Driel was there. Alexander Bjork. So there's guys that are around there that maybe getting the call up. But it's an exciting event next week, and we'll get what we're doing this week out of the way and go on to that.
Yeah, and to your point, the Scandinavian Mixed is the name of our event that we're playing here. And again, like you said in the lead up, it's the Mix podcast for us. You can find us on all the platforms: Daily Fantasy Sports, Picks and Bets, the Mix. So it's kind of maybe poetic that we're talking about this event that is going to be half of the European Tour on the men's side, half of the European Tour on the women's side, of the ladies' European Tour. So it is going to be one collective odds board that we're going to talk through and break down. It's going to be one winner for the week, one leaderboard talking through and being able to pick out, with the differences in the courses simply being the length of the tees. We're going to see the women's side of things play closer to 6,100 yards, while the guys plays around 7,100 yards. But I think off the top, we need to have the conversation if we can see the ladies compete at the top of the leaderboard, because it seems events like this in the past, they come far and few in between, but it hasn't had a lady break through as a champion. We've had one come in second place, but often the leaderboard still is littered with the men's side of things. What's your thoughts off the top?
Yeah, and I think that's probably the way it's going to happen this week as well. I think there's probably not quite enough disparity in the yardage to really make a difference. I said Megan McLaren that came second in that event, and I think you're going to go on to some in a minute, and I think there's probably going to be one that can be a factor. It's about getting that one right. And it's not necessarily going to be the one that everybody thinks it is. I think the lady you potentially going to pick is someone I suppose Jason on the Lost Words podcast yesterday. We spoke about, we didn't actually do a podcast, but we spoke in message about that being our favourite. But that was when it was just the ladies' odds out. It's whether she can compete with the men. So I've generally focused on the men this week, but I've got one long shot for the ladies.
Yeah. And I think the due diligence of putting in the effort and the research and understanding how these ladies set up, it's going to provide an edge, whether that is going to be in the odds markets for the week, because, when they translate and put them with the men, we are seeing these ladies get 3, 4, 5 times the odds of what it is in the women's side. So if they are setting it up, I think it all does come up to if they are going to set it up in a way to give one a distinct advantage or the men maybe a distinct disadvantage on some holes, that does level this leaderboard. Because personally, I think it would be incredible to see a back and forth between, the top men's, top women's being right there neck and neck towards the end. I think that would be, an incredible sight to see. It would be something I think would be, very inviting for viewers to learn more about this side of golf. So I think it was worth once diving in and understanding the way these golfers form is, what they do best, to chance a few of them. So I'm going to have a couple on my card. And also this week on DraftKings, it is the combined event. So there are going to be, from an ownership perspective, if you're always playing the ownership game, some of these ladies that probably have the exact same odds to win as some of the guys will be similar priced. However, they'll probably be a quarter of the ownership, as they are much more unfamiliar names to the general public. So that just kind of leads into my thought process on the week. I'm going to stop there and make sure, if you've been enjoying our show, our European Tour daily, picks and bets, if you can find that on Mayo Media Network. If you rate, review, subscribe to us on YouTube, that would go a very long way in the continued support of our show. And with that, let's go to the top of the leaderboard. If you go through the odds market, who up top stands out to you for the week, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, there's a host there, isn't there? And they kind of form the obvious names. The one that I was kind of interested in before the odds came out was Alexander Bjork. Being Swedish, coming here in Sweden, obviously gives him might give him an edge, might not. He's played well in his home country in the past. He's striking the ball incredibly well. He's putting really nicely as well. He's coming back to the form that you and I both know he has in his locker. But I thought they were slightly on the short side considering the other selections that I've got. The first lady that comes across on the odds board is a Taya Kittikul, which I believe is the first selection for you.
Yeah, that's where I am going to really begin. And I think it comes from, if those who have been watching, and maybe not even, she's played in one event so far in the LPGA this year and took it to the wire. Arguably should have won in Thailand when Arya Jutanagarn had an epic final round. Thailand's her home country. We have seen Thittikul really on the scene from since she was 14 years old. She has shown up in some majors as an amateur. She has won events overseas as, a young teenager. And now still at the age of 18, she is the rising star of what we saw just happen in yesterday's U.S. Women's Open, like a Yuka Saso at 19 years old. Thittikul, with some, status, probably has the ability to compete with the best in the world. She beat Patty Tavatanaka that week, in her home country. It was a real, putt or two away that burned the edge on 17 and 18, 2 missed putts within 6 feet away from winning that event. So I think Thittikul, at the odds she has, she also was the co-leader last week after 2 rounds. They only played 3 rounds on the Ladies European Tour. After 36 holes, she was the co-leader, struggled on Sunday a little bit, still ended up with a 6th place finish. So that, recent form with the pedigree of what we've seen out of her amateur career is enough to chance. There's 33s for her to win in the stateside here, 28s as well. If you look kind of overseas, I just think there's so much talent there that if they do set it up with the opportunity, Thittikul can be right in the thick of things.
Look, she won a professional tournament at 14 years of age, and then won that event 2 years later as well. 5 under and 22 under par, same event, Thailand Championship. So she's got a lot of range. What I did like about her is she finished 29th in the Women's British Open as well, which I think, we haven't actually discussed it in terms of the quarter this week. I think it's going to be it's sort of described as a heathland sort of throwback to a links course. So the designer is Martin Hawtrey, who has been involved in a lot of links places. He's been involved in Birkdale, which of course 2017 Open, the old course of St Andrews for Dunhill Links, Hernbury, Sunningdale, Lahinch, which is 2019 Irish Open. So he's been involved in a lot of places like that, and I think that's going to be a factor. And if you've got a lady that's played well in Open Championships, and certainly the men that are going to go on as well, I think that's going to be a huge factor. And you just can tell. I mean, we talked about this last week for the US Women's Open. The age that these ladies come out and win for the first time is frightening, isn't it? I mean, it really is amazing. I don't know. I find it strange, but it is. I don't know if there's less of an intimidation factor when you're a young girl going against ladies, as opposed to a young lad going against men. I don't really know the difference, but that seems to be something like that. And one of the things that I thought of, and I'll throw it to you as well, is do you think there's going to be an advantage for the first two rounds for the ladies that are playing two ladies with one man as opposed to one lady with two men? Just having a bit of company on one of those tees as opposed to just having to walk down to that tee while the others tee off from the others. I don't know if it's that simple, but it could be something like that could come into play.
Yeah, that's intriguing because I think in times in past when we've seen this event like the Vic Open, they structured it where it was two different courses. They didn't, mix up the tee times actually. So yeah, I mean, I think, is it a noticeable advantage? Probably not. Is it something that conversation, different things that can happen? You can see somebody else hit a shot to a par three when, the men's, if they're 30, 40 yards back, is it going to play differently? What club are you hitting into the wind? Is those little things can add up. Absolutely. So I'm excited they did it that way. I assumed it was going to be 3-3 and kind of mix it up so you don't have pace of play issues. Maybe we do have a little bit longer rounds this week because you're teeing off from two separate ones. But, I think that's pretty interesting. Who else do you, I guess, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just looking at one of the ones that stood out to me. I was looking at Alexander Bjork's tee time, and he's playing with Emily Christine Pedersen and Leanne Pace. So you think that, that'd be nice for the girls. And then you've got Annabelle Dimmock playing with Adrian Twiggy and Jenny Hagland, as opposed to, just one girl playing against two men. I don't know that, we can't quantify it. That's the thing, isn't it? There's nothing statistically that we can run as a model. There's nothing, we're just second guessing what they think. But like you said, I was thinking of it from a confidence point of view, of having someone to talk to on the way round, just feeling less intimidated, not having to feel like you're holding everybody up, as opposed to you're actually thinking about from shot advantage of being able to see another lady play a shot. And I think that's a massive factor as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it can go definitely in that favor. So for you, I know one golfer who was right in the thick of things just on Monday is somebody you're intrigued at. Sell me on Matthew Southgate.
So for me, what I just mentioned there with the course designer is there's a lot of links feel about this event. When we think about golfers in terms of links, Matthew Southgate's name is pretty much synonymous. This is a guy that, despite not having won, has a lot of success in it. Second last week, he's been 10th in Sweden at Nordea Masters. He's been second at Dunhill Links, second and fourth at the Irish Open, sixth at the Open at Birkdale, which is obviously Martin Tree that we just talked about. Second at the Hydro Challenge on the Challenge Shore, which is another Heathland course there at Spey Hill. T9 Scottish Open, it carries on. T22 at Walton Heath at the British Masters back in 2018 as well. So I think for me, having the confidence that he had last week, I know he let himself down in the final round, but I think that's something that can happen to anyone. I don't think anyone's adverse to that happening too. Some more than others, and some it means more to others, I guess. But for me, he's got an opportunity now to come to a golf course which should suit. I mean, we're sort of guessing, having not seen the golf course, and really he's got plenty of room off the tee to give it a smash. And he's got the US Open to look forward to, as you mentioned. That to try and get that first win is surely important to him.
Yeah, the issue I guess I have is such a discrepancy in odds of what we saw him tee up last week. He goes from 125, 150s last week down to 33s and deserving so. What has been interesting about Southgate is his ball striking never leaves him. Whether or not he misses the cut or finishes second, it's consistent fairways, greens, like he has. So he was on that short list even approaching last week. So it's great to see him continue those trends. So yeah, I mean, it's often if you catch somebody in form, the odds are going to fall with them. I think that's just the way it of course works, unless you get extremely lucky and, catch them before that finish comes with it. But when we get into, for me, the middling range, there's two golfers that, when we view them against the top of the leaderboard, one in my opinion, kind of stands out like a sore thumb. And the other one was just in form of the ball striking quite immaculate last week. I'll start with the one in Aaron Rai, a golfer that you have kind of been keen on at some of these events recently and talked through. Aaron Rai was a level above anyone in this field for quite some time, arguably the end of the 2020 season. Somebody that you trust when we talk about fairways, you talk about hitting greens, and he continued to do that. Even last week in 2 rounds, he had exceptional iron play. It was the putter that was forgotten. He was 72-1 in the markets for last week's events, which was a clear, step above what we're seeing this week from the men's side. And then you cut it in half and then, provide what the ladies do have to offer. So to see Aaron Rai at 50s and 55s, if you look through the tea leaves and some of those numbers, the form is there from what you want it to be in Aaron Rai. It's a matter of not, can he have that Scottish Open type putter, in which he did when he won that week. I'm willing to take the risk because I think the odds are really the biggest factor for me in that situation.
Yeah, and look, we're talking about a guy that beat Tommy Fleetwood in a playoff at the Scottish Open. We're talking about linked golf. Renaissance is obviously that. He can do it in tough conditions. He likes the 2 gloves. He's not Tommy Gainey, but he's similar. So look, I think he's a great pick. I mean, I went with him a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know. I think for me, it's just I wanted sort of one from the top, and Matthew Southgate was the one. And to your point about the shorter odds, I was hoping for slightly bigger, but I was expecting shorter. So I was quite happy it was opened up at 41 was when I picked him and sort of stuck with him, because if it wasn't for the fact that it suits him so well, like the links angle, if that plays out, is just absolutely fine. So if it was any other event, I'd have just left him alone. But for me, it was important to stick with him.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about that. Again, validating the research you do, you're keen on golfers. Price, in some sense, doesn't matter for those that, maybe it's the eye test. You're watching enough to see, okay, Garrett Cago is going lower, hitting every pin in round 4 before he breaks through the wind. Is it you knowing the distinctions of the course and the designer? I think those are great correlations. So absolutely, when you're gung-ho on a pick, yeah, I think, and it definitely can be, one good finish can plummet odds, and that, of course, isn't a reason just to get off a golfer. So one that I am considering, or I guess and going in on right in that same range with Aaron Rai, is a golfer who we've mentioned before has a bit of those Sunday scaries, a golfer who's, best game, in my opinion, off the tee approach can literally compete on the PGA Tour. Truthfully, I think Sean Crocker's ball striking is elite. It's just the short game, the putter, the emotions when you get in the mix is something that just hasn't really been there for him in quite some time. Does a field like this, does a setting like this potentially, alleviate a little bit of that? I don't know. But he gained, almost 3.5 strokes per round just last week, and that's something to be said. Molinari was able to gain 4 strokes per round ball striking, which was unbelievable. But Crocker was right there, finished 11th. You haven't made money if you're betting Sean Crocker throughout his career. You really haven't. And, he shows up on the toughest of courses, I think. And maybe this isn't the right one for that, but boy, oh boy, is that ball striking incredible.
When you look at the top of the leaderboard last week, there was 2 or 3 guys that really didn't play well with the putter. Ryan Fox, just kind of Simon, the other 2, but Sean Crocker would just stand out, poor again on the greens, and we will say it until red in the face. That is the only thing holding him back, because, like you say, I think the way he hits the ball is PGA Tour quality level. We're talking about a guy. We talk about Eric Van Rooyen is a past champion of this event. Has gone over to the PGA Tour. Has a great touch around the greens, can get good on the greens, and everyone kind of talks about him being able to win over there. Well, I don't think there's much quality between him and Eric Van Rooyen. Potentially, it's just being able to hold those putts. It's not even a case of, last week was a top finish for him, and that's not coming up regularly enough. It's not like Matthias Schwab, who keeps finishing top 5, top 10, and still can't putt. He's not even piecing those together. So once he does, his price is gonna plummet, like we see with Schwab. even without that victory. It's just that he needs to do more of what he done last week consistently, and this could be a good place for him to start.
Yeah, and again, it seems, I guess Horsfield would have been somebody as well that you would have thought just kept, banging down the door from a birdie perspective, from a ball striking perspective, until it flipped like that. It is probably not that long till you see him getting regular starts stateside. Horsfield's his best buddy, and I think that's a pretty interesting comparison as well with EVR. I guess we each kind of have a golfer here. I think we talk about before. I mentioned a couple of the ladies that I'm interested in, who I think it's a Frenchman in this range that's coming up on your card, correct?
An Italian, Renato Paratore.
Oh yeah, you're a Paratore first. Yes.
Yes. So he is, he came back to form a bit last week. He plays, pretty well in these kind of British conditions. He's won he's won Nordea Masters in 2017, 7th at the Dunhill Links, 4th in Qatar. We talk about some links events as well. T11th in 2 of the last 3 weeks as well. 12th in Austria. It just strikes me that he's kind of returning to form. And T10 in putting last week as well is something that can get away from him. I quite like that. I think the fact that he's got success of winning in Sweden, I think, again, it's not the same course, but Swedish golf courses tend to be kind of linksy, tend to be kind of British feeling at times. And that could just lead into what he likes.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about best buddies, roommates with our man Guido Migliazzi. So
that's got to be worth 10 points, 10
at minimum. You kidding me? Yeah. So no, I'm a huge fan of Paratore. Right about a year ago when he did have that second win for him, that was, quite an event. So good to see you on him. I think the next golfer that I'd want to discuss, I guess I have a couple of them here before I really get into the ladies. I still I float around the 6 to 7 selections, try to limit myself, but I just get too excited for some of these events, especially even when it's ones like the Scandinavian mix here. But I'll start with the next golfer, one that we backed in Kenya that gave us everything we thought he had, one that, going into the final round, this was the event that started on Tuesday, right? The Kenya Savannah, yeah. I think, would have been the one for Darren Fitchert, old man Darren, who, if you look at his ball striking statistics when he plays on the European Tour, they're next level. Like, it's another situation where you back the guys that you hope that are going to be able to putt, for the first time. I mean, he went second. He just missed out on the playoff when Rosner won that event. It would have been Guido and him in that playoff that week, and Mular. But then he backed it up with a 24th and a 10th. And then on the Challenge Tour was 14th and 12th in those 2 events. So just a continued run of consistent type 4. But it's just enough that we have seen out of him a breakthrough win at his age in the European Tour with everything else that's happening. It's just kind of poetic.
Yeah, and he's got 3 top 15s in the Nordea Masters as well. I was just checking out the course form on here because I remember him playing well here in the past. He's a guy that, like you say, old, so we know what he is. We know exactly what, and a lot of people see that as a negative. But we know where these guys are going to play well. We know the sort of things that are going to suit him. South Africans tend to like these firm and fast conditions that we're going to get here this week. We play a lot of them play well in British Opens and links as well. Charles Schwartzel, Brandon Grace, Louise Tate will play well in Opens and things like that as well. So yeah, for me, I thought he was a good pick there. To your point about the Frenchman that we were talking about earlier on, Benjamin Hibert. For starters, I thought you were testing me and my nationalities, and then secondly, I remembered that actually we are talking about another Frenchman here. So, this is good. Look, he was tied 7th last week, and before we had Victor Perez coming in the way that he did, Benjamin Hibert was really on, he was on the ascension. He was looking like the guy that was going to win. He had a couple of playoff losses, and I think he's returning to a bit of form now, and he struck his irons really well. He's been second at the 2019 Scottish Open, tied 4th at Dunhill Links, 8th at the Irish Open. So to me, there's a lot of, links pedigree there. Whether that translates to this golf course, he hasn't got the form at the Walton Heath. He hasn't got the form at Birkdale like I've been looking for. But, he's played well in the right places. And, he's won on the English Challenge in 2011. UK Championship he was third as well. So he clearly likes the British type of field of events. If that's what we get here this week, which I'm kind of hoping we do, otherwise a lot of my picks are going to be disappointing. I think he could be a good runner at 90 to 1.
Yeah, I think he's another one when you look at pedigree, I guess, in regards to the golfers a little bit further down there. He does seem to stand above, and has that tick of recent form just recently. One golfer that we have to mention, and I would say as well, as we talk about some of these golfers a little bit deeper, there are sub markets. There are books that have offered men's only and women's only for the different events. And again, there's going to be one winner, but they could pay out even in each way, the top 6 guys, top 6 ladies, and make it a profitable week from that side of things. So I went in on this golfer at 100 to 1 in the men's only side. This golfer has gone from 500s down to 80s. Like before I even woke up, I never even sniffed a 500 over here. Yeah, that's how quickly it really went by. And it's, a credit to those that were just waiting for it to happen. But Ludwig Aberg, I believe is how you pronounce it, Aberg would be the correct way. A golfer who is, quite a pedigree inside the top 5 in the world amateur golf rankings, but back-to-back professional wins for him on the pro golf tour. You don't get that out of a golfer, who is 5th in the amateurs, a golfer who was 500s, in his country playing this event. I would give a shout out to somebody who I'd absolutely recommended following on Twitter. Probably one of the best tipsters that I have seen in Bradley Todd. You can find him at Bradley_Todd. Golfer who hit him, or a tip who hit him in those pro golf tour events at 400 to 1. So, he came out right away this morning, got on him in 150s. I saw some 500s being out there, but this is the style of golfer we've backed often at the end of my cards each week. Do you have any more to add on kind of what you see out of his short amateur, now potentially professional career?
So the only thing that sort of worried me was the fact that, has it been missed? I mean, this is a guy that we like to add on at the end of the shows, or you certainly like to pick out on, and it felt like that kind of guy. I feel like it would still be a surprise, despite the fact his pedigree is so good, that he would win. But is it 3 times he's won in college in 2021?
Texas Tech, yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jones Cup, the Prestige, and the Thunderbird Collegiate as well. Both been the Big 12 Men's Championship, so he's got a lot of real lot of pedigree up in college. There's only a couple of real top guys ahead of him in those rankings, and he's going to come over here and test his skills. And I think, like we spoke about before on the Nordic Golf League and things like that, and these mini tours, they're a better indicator than we probably give credit for. And for him to win those at such a young age, and then come into this event, I think he's going to be full of confidence. He's not going to be worried about anything. He's not going to feel any pressure. It's not like he's an Alexander Bjork, who's one of the leaders in the market and expected to win. It's not Henrik Stenson, who's got the hosting duties or anything like that. This is a kid that can run there, take his chance, and head back to college and carry on a successful season there.
Yeah, and you're right. I did misspeak. It was the Nordic Golf League, not the PGT, but the NGL, if you research on the OWGR site. But he has never missed a cut there. He went 40th first, backs it up with a 5th, 11th, 21st, 35th in his Nordic Golf League events. But yeah, I just think overall, I mean, you just have to, especially when they offered those odds, and these were all in 2020, before collegiate kind of got rolling again. But, the Jones Cup, winning that event, that's a massive one too. I think you chance it. But of course, now in the 80s, potentially you can play him in the low 7s on DraftKings and get a little bit of a sleeper. But he's somebody to keep your eye on as well. From the men's side, is there anybody else you feel mentioned?
Dale Whitnell, I think he's incredibly trending in the right direction. T21, T19, T11. He's played Dunhill Links way back in 2009 when he was first starting out. He played well there. Had a bad third round to kind of hold him back. And he should like his setup. He should play well in these sort of tests. It should be right up his street. And he should be full of confidence. I still don't know what the win equity is for him, so that kind of felt short. It says the person's backed Matthew Southgate at such a short price. But the other guy that I thought about was another Swede. It was Anton Carlson, who's been playing really well on the Challenge Tour. I don't think we've seen the best out of him just yet. Obviously, a lot of pedigree with his dad being Robert Carlson, but I don't know. I think he might even have been pulled out of the competition because his odds are disappearing. So that was one thing that kind of put me off. And yeah, I kind of wanted to keep it light this week. We've got a big event next week. A lot of people that we want to follow, and I just didn't feel like I need to get heavily involved because I may have sounded dismissive about this event. I think the event is absolutely great. I think it's something that the game of golf needs. I still think it'd be better if it was pairs sometimes, team format. But from a betting point of view, I just find it really hard to get a grip of how much of an advantage any one that's going to have over the other. Like you said at the top of the show, it might be that ladies are right up there at the end, 5 or 6 of them in the places because they're so far forward. I really don't know how to quantify it based on previous form. It won't be the case, but that could change any given week.
Yeah, absolutely. Anton Carlson, I do not see him with a tee time right now.
Yeah.
There is a Jessica Carlson that is teeing it up. But Anton would be the one that I did think he was in the field to start the event. I don't see with a tee time now. I'll give a little due to the research, I think, on 2 girls that stood out in my opinion. One being Olivia Cowan. So Olivia Cowan has gone in her last 2 Ladies European Tour events, 3rd and 10th. And what was interesting, so looking through, they do have the greens in regulation. They do have driving accuracy, birdies. They have all the same, outside of strokes gain statistics. Well, LPGA doesn't have them either right now. They have all of the same stats that the LPGA does offer. So Olivia Cowan is the prototypical golfer that we back. She is top 5 in driving accuracy and top 5 in greens in regulation of these ladies in the field over those last few events. They haven't had many events to start off the 2021 Ladies European Tour season, but to see a ball striker like she has, she's not the longest, but again, fairways, greens, if we're saying Aaron Rai, we're saying Matthew Southgate, potentially Olivia Cowan is that of the European Tour on the ladies side. So, you see that trending form. She's available at 100, 125s to 1. I think she presents some interesting side of things from just a pure statistical deep dive on her.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the thing, isn't it? Is kind of looking at the form. She was a person that stuck out to me in terms of that current form. And that was really, I find the thing that I found the most frustrating is hard to get statistics right on terms of their ball striking, in terms of their driving distance, accuracy, etc. It's not the easiest to get hold of. So you can only really go on the current form. And that's why someone like Annabelle Dimmock stood out to me. She was second last week. She played well at the tail end of 2020. She was second in one of those Road Ladies Series events as well. And there was a 250 to 1 number on her earlier in the group fight. I think she was 50 to 1 in just the ladies section. So that was the one person that stood out for me. But I must admit, it was kind of really just based on the fact she came second last week, and I thought the number was too big.
Yeah, and there are a good amount of these ladies who have decent recent form that are, they do get a boost of odds relative to what they are in the women's only market. And if all it takes is, a couple T advantages for them to really make a run at this. And the way I thought about seeing kind of the scores at sometimes the events that are a separation between men's and women's is, maybe the guys and ladies haven't been able to reach the scores, of course, of what the guys have. So I wanted to target, if I was going to get any sort of long shot, somebody who is racking up birdies. So, forgive me if I am wrong on Tavisa Malik, a 25-year-old out of India with back-to-back top 10 finishes on the Ladies European Tour. A golfer who, if we talked about greens and regulation, is right up there, but a golfer relative to her odds. I mean, if you looked at the shortest women that we talked about, Peterson, Thitikul, you would see also some of the young Swedens in Maja Stark and Lynn Grant, 2 other ones that are up there. Golfers who maybe have a little bit more pedigree of what they've played upon, they are the ones who are top of those statistics. But, when we looked at it was, let me just confirm again. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing this correctly. Tavisa Malik she was in the thick of things from a weighted birdie average against those fields. So the other interesting part that I did see while researching her, she is on the fringe of clinching a berth into the Olympics for Tokyo. It is coming right upon there. There's only a little bit left to accumulate points for that. She bogeyed 18 last week. A top 5 finish would have gotten her into the Olympics. So she needs another strong week this week to accumulate some of these points and give herself, that locked in berth to Tokyo, which is a huge deal. That is something where, we hear it with Chen Fang, recently, and talking about what the Olympics has done, representing your country is quite phenomenal, especially for the ladies side that, maybe don't get elevated enough in some of their big events. That's a massive ordeal. So she was available at 500s. I saw some 250s, you get it each way. You mentioned with that. So I think potentially that would be my sleeper pick of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like we say on a lot of weeks, and I think it's especially true this week, is any sort of indication, because I think it's such a difficult market to assess that if you can, like you said there, you wanted to target a golf that had birdie capabilities. It's not something that they're going to make up a lot of numbers. They're going to see what scoring's like from the men's side, especially. I mean, it depends what we think the score is going to be like this week. I think there's potential to score really well around here. It is forecast to be fairly breezy, but I think that can help certain players as well. So, yeah, it'd really be interesting to see. I think that, like you say, the Olympic angle was huge. And I think any one thing that's enough, like I say every week, I mean, you pick up all these 300, 500 to 1 numbers, and I just go, I don't know where he's put that from. And then all of a sudden, one of them wins the US Women's Open, and I no longer know what else to say. So I am just going to say that if you say it's good, I say it's good, and move on quickly from that.
Hey, there was a couple 500 to 1 shots that I had last week that were, you wake up, my trick is I wake up in the morning, I can barely open my eyes. And then the European Tour app is so bright. It is the brightest app that is out there. And I lean over like 3 a.m, try to scroll. I always go to the bottom and then to the top. And the first thing I see is a star next to one of my golfers. It's like, okay, here we go. He's 6 over after 7 holes. Here's your 500 to 1 long shot you thought you had for the week. But it works out in the favor. It doesn't take, many to pay off at those odds. So let's review your card again, Tom, from the top.
Yeah, so for me, it was Matthew Southgate at 33 to 1. Renato Paratore, I think it was 45.50 to 1. There was a bit of that earlier. Benjamin Hibert at 90 to 1. Dale Whitnell, someone I think is worth following, but I'm not sure about the winnings there. And Annabelle Dimmock from the ladies' side. So I don't know if you want to go for the 200 to 1 from the outright, or if you just want to take 50 for the ladies section. But either way, I think she's worth putting in.
Absolutely. So my card is Athia Thitical, starting up at 33. Aaron Rye, who's available in the 50s. Sean Crocker, 55s are available. Darren Fitcher, 66 to 70s for him. Ludwig Aberg, our Nordic golf champion. You can find him anywhere. If there are still books out there, I don't know, that maybe are sleeping still overseas. If there's that 500 you caught early. If not, I still think it's risking, a chance at the hundreds that were available. And then on the ladies' side, Olivia Cowan, our Lady European Tour ball striking phenom. And then Tavisa Malik at 250 to 1 will round out my card for the week. So again, like Tom said, it is a difficult event to probably speculate on and handicap. One to, that we are, it's still our core, very excited to watch. Hopefully creates a awesome mixed competition as we go down to the backstretch with the girls and guys that are filling up our betting cards for the week.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, I don't think everything I say on this podcast is factually true. Anselm Carlson may not be Robert Carlson's son. I may have just made so, that's absolutely a possibility. For some reason, I was convinced he was, but I think he's a bit too up. So, yeah, moving swiftly on from there.
Part of being the co-host, man, is I buy anything that you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, and I know you don't want to correct me, and even though I wanted to correct you about Benjamin Hebert being French, and here we go. We move on, because otherwise I just make up things all as we go along.
Hey, I love it. I love it, Tom. Well, I appreciate everything you do, the research you put in. For listeners of the show, let's have another great week. So again, please feel free to find us on all of your podcast platforms, Daily Fantasy Sports, the picks and bets. You can find us the mix there for that. And then best of luck this week, everybody, at the Scandinavian Mixed.